their VP of Sales and Marketing, and he is going to talk with us all today about opportunities for expanding the discussion when you're speaking with clients to identify other areas that are needs of theirs, and I guess comfortable ways to suggest, for instance, if you see that an organization's training documentation is out of date, not only mentioning that it's out of date, but also that EAS can help with that training, or perhaps if it's, you're doing a GMP audit, you can gently also let them know that EAS does labeling, things of that nature. And of course, with EAS's new alignment with Certified Laboratories, there are opportunities for testing. So Ted is going to talk a little bit about Certified, and Ted, I know when Certified, EAS came under the Certified umbrella, that we did have a presentation on Certified, but certainly the companies have expanded. So that will be great to learn. Yeah, and with that, I will just let you take it away.
Same, I appreciate it, and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So what I thought we could do today, and Amy, that was a great introduction. So what I thought we could do today is not have my computer work. Let's move forward here. Hold on one second. There we go. So what I thought we could do today is, an introduction, which Amy just did, great. So what I'd like to do is give you a quick introduction about who Certified Laboratories is and where we come from, real brief. Talk about sort of this evolution to the certified group, which includes now EAS and a number of other solution expansions that we've done in the past year and a half. A little bit about why Certified Labs makes a good partner, especially with the work and the consulting work that you do as compared to some of the other people in the marketplace. Some key segment drivers, some food service, some schematic service, some supplement services. But really what I want to talk about is really the prospecting that Amy talked about, and some of the things in my experience that during different types of consulting calls with clients really offer more opportunity to deliver a more total solution to the customer. And I think now, like Amy said, with a partnership between the consulting arm of EAS and this now expansive menu of analytical services from Certified Laboratories and what the companies that fall under there, we have a great opportunity to sort of combine resources and at the end of the day, deliver a better overall experience and a more singular overall experience to the customers. If anyone has any questions during the talk, feel free to jump in, and I'm here, and we can pause. But a little bit about Certified Laboratories to begin with. So Certified Laboratories was actually founded in 1926 as a dairy lab in New York City. The lab actually used to be on Wall Street. And it was founded because it was illegal back then to sell milk from farms a certain limit outside the city, a certain range outside the city. So Certified Labs was started way back then. I believe that the gentleman's name was Dr. Paley. Way back then, there's a Paley flask that's named after him that's used in the laboratory. And then it's since grown into sort of what it is today. So we are now out on Long Island is our headquarters, but we have other sites as well. So basically from 1926 up until about 2 years ago, Certified Labs grew from a small lab in New York City all the way to a lab with 4 locations throughout the United States. And then in the past 2 years, we've sort of grown our relationship here into what's becoming the Certified Group, where we've acquired a number of different other laboratories and a number of different other solutions as well. And I know EAS, one of the nice things, great synergies between EAS and Certified is that our analytical solutions match almost identically with the consulting solutions that you all provide. So we bought, we organized under Certified Labs. We organized Micro Quality Labs, which is a cosmetic and personal care company out in California. Micro Consult Labs in Texas, which again is cosmetics and personal care. We have supplements, botanicals, CBD, and cannabis at 3 of our locations. ABC testing, Lab Smart, and Micro Quality Labs. Vaping, nicotine, and cannabis is specifically up at LabStat up in Canada. And then, of course, last but not least, at the very end, we have the EAS Consulting Group, which now offers consulting, which goes nicely with the analytical expertise of food, supplements, and pharma. So just a quick look. Like I said, there's sort of the history of Certified Laboratories, and you can see sort of the expanded footprint we now have within North America, and you know we continue to grow underneath sort of this new umbrella of certified group companies. So you know the blue dots are the core Certified Laboratories. The red dots are some of the new acquisitions, which include the Micro Quality Labs, Micro Consult down there in Texas, Lab Smarts up there in, is that Edmonton, I believe, that area. And then, you know, we have Lab Stat right up there by Toronto. So as you can see, you know, footprint is always important when it comes to analytical services. And
Uh-oh, Ted, we lost your audio. Sorry, everyone. Well, bear with us. Looks like he's calling back in, maybe. So once he gets back on, since I did start this in a webinar mode, of course, there's no opportunity to ask a verbal question unless I unmute your microphone. So if you do have a question, you'll see the raise hand on your screen. You can click raise hand and we can pause and I can unmute your microphone for you. There he is.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't know how long I talked before I realized that it was.
No worries.
I'm
A
so tired.
of modern meetings.
What's that?
It's a function of modern meetings.
I know, it's a horrible one because I don't think there's anything more frustrating.
Yeah. Yep. So this is the slide we were on right here.
Yeah, perfect. So I didn't lose you for too long. But as you can see, I think one of the interesting things is footprint of companies is really important, right? In analytical testing, the geographic footprint is really important. And with this expansion, it allows us to really compete with some of the larger laboratories in the space. A couple of years ago, I don't know if you heard this, there used to be something called the Wechsler report on food safety testing. And what it basically did was, you know, one of the first questions they ask is, why do you choose your analytical testing lab? And 70% of people chose the lab based on geographic footprint. So based on their local lab, I picked the one that was closest to me. It wasn't on service, it wasn't necessarily on menu, it wasn't on value, it was on location. I think that's changed a little bit in the last 5 or 6 years, where, I think the requirements for for food safety have gotten a little more complex. But still, I think there's a perception of turnaround time with local labs that really is the driving value. So this is really exciting for us here at Certified as we continue to grow. And along these lines, you can sort of see, where, and I'll talk about this in a quick second, on where Certified Labs really focuses, and this certified group of companies really focuses our efforts. We aren't necessarily in the traditional, what do they call it, the breadbasket of America or whatever it is, where in the Southeast where there's a lot of poultry, or in the Midwest where there's a lot of beef. And Certified Labs traditionally hasn't been a major player in the beef and protein type marketplaces. Where our expertise really lies is in things like spices, seasonings, ingredients, refrigerated foods, seafood, FDA import work. We've gotten a ton of new business and new opportunities within the alternative protein and products, and that includes both the vegetarian or the plant-based proteins, as well as the up-and-coming cell culture-based marketplace. We work with a company called Blue Nalu, which is really, really interesting. They're making a cell cultured based mahi-mahi and tuna out in California, and just really, really innovative stuff there. Cheese and dairy, confectionery, nuts and agriculture. And then along the food lines, the other key growing area that we're noticing a tremendous amount of innovation in, which is opening up some opportunities for us, is in the beverages, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverage markets. So as you can see, again, really excited about our footprint, where we're coming. Really, really exciting to have you guys as part of our, sort of part of our group as an extension. Amy and the sort of EAS team. I can tell you, even in the past week, we have found probably 3 or 4 opportunities that the EAS group has tremendously helped some customers that stay out of some challenging regulatory hurdles. And let's sort of leave it at that. And so it's been this great partnership being able to provide customers another resource for regulatory guidance, for labeling guidance through Catherine, a whole litany of questions that pop up, where from an analytical lab we could help provide direction, but we can't provide, it's very difficult for us to provide complete solutions, which is what you all sort of do. So this is what I wanted to talk about really briefly, and then I can get into some more of the nuts and bolts. But in this, in Switzerland, I don't know if this analogy works, but for those of us in the US, Certified Labs has always filled this sort of unmet need in our industry. We're not the biggest, right? We're not a Eurofins and we're not a Meriu Nutriscience Labs. However, we do have a breadth of expertise and services that can rival any of those, especially now that we've expanded to these other categories. So as you're out in your customers or with your clients, a lot of times clients will have to go to multiple labs to get things done. A lot of times they may not be happy with the service levels at some of the large providers. And that's sort of where we're able to bridge this gap. So here in the US, we all know Home Depot and Lowe's. And this is the analogy I like to use with our customers about sort of where we fit in the whole grand scheme of things. So, you can walk into Home Depot and Lowe's. Let's say you have to dig a hole and put up a fence, right? There's many, many locations. So we probably have one within 5 miles of each other, of where 5 to 15 miles of where you live. They probably have a ton of different shovels, a ton of different fence posts. You're going to have to go in, you're going to have to try to find someone to help you. The people that work there aren't necessarily as helpful as they used to be years ago. You have to go through many layers to gain some access to expertise. They're not going to know you. They're not going to know the type of fence or the type of soil you're building on. They're not going to ask you why you're building a fence to begin with. But they're going to have all the stuff, but it's sort of up to you to figure out what you need to use. And then way on the other side, you have your like neighborhood bodega type, like hardware stores, where it's really convenient. It's right around the corner. They're friendly. You know the guy's name. He knows your kids. Tremendous amount of skill set. It's usually a guy that's been doing this for long. He knows your house. He knows the color of your house. He knows the soil. But he's only going to have one type of shovel, and he's probably only going to have one type of fence post. And the fence post is going to match everyone else in the neighborhood because that's where they shop. And where we fit in is we fit right here in the middle, right? Where, like an Ace Hardware is like, if you guys have ever been into an Ace Hardware, it's a really nice combination of both. There's enough locations around to help provide you service. The staff is always responsive, knowledgeable. They know where everything is. They can help you walk through things. And it's a well-designed and developed inventory. And they're going to walk through the process with you. And then, they're going to remember you. And we're going to help you through the entire process. But we also have all the solutions you need in order to complete your either food safety, help you navigate the regulatory environment, whatever you're really trying to do, where we have the expertise and access to that expertise that you don't necessarily get at the larger players. So can I ask, does that analogy make sense? And this is why I really think we're well positioned to help support a consulting group from an analytical testing, because that's basically what you all do as well. You have the breadth of expertise across a number of different segments. I think there's only been one inquiry that's come in the past year that EAS hasn't been able to help me with, and that was just this past week. And it was on some doping gum, some like doping performance enhancement gum or something along those lines. So Amy and team, does that analogy make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that's great. So that brings me into prospecting for analytical services, right? And what are some of the key questions to ask? And I think, these are all open-ended and I think really, really important. But I think, when, in my experience, and I used to work for a competitor, sometimes there's a fine line between, you want to keep a fine line between the consulting and auditing and the testing services. And it can be, some companies do this more rigorous than others in our space. I think I'm thinking, Milieu has a pretty solid line. We have a pretty solid line between the two companies. But there are other companies that tie that service in really closely, and IEH comes to mind. So it's really on how to approach the market. I'll get to that. I'll get to the questions after. Sorry, I got distracted. But I think at the end of the day, what we want to do is provide the customer the best, most singular overall experience. And I know everyone hates this term, but as much of a one-stop shop as possible, and being able to leverage the consulting piece with an in-house testing lab, more or less an independent, but in-house testing lab or related testing lab, allows us to work more closely together on customer needs, on executing as rapidly for customers as possible. A lot of times when these customers are in stressed situations, whether it's a regulatory issue or a sample shipment or an FDA detention type situation, I think it allows us to be a lot more nimble working together than maybe their current lab or maybe some of the other labs out there. But when you're prospecting in a situation with a customer, my biggest, and this is the one I tell my team all the time, is, hey, what's new? This is my favorite question to ask customers, and I ask it on every single one of my business review calls, because anything new requires evaluation, right? New products and packaging may require shelf life, labeling, or stability and challenge studies for customers. Is this something entirely new to the marketplace? I had a customer, for example, a client reach out with a product that was a sanitizing shampoo. And it sounded like it was going to be a challenge, but it was probably one of the most complicated testing that required 2 EAS consultants to help the customer walk through the risks involved with something like that, right? Whether it's a drug, if you call it sanitizing, or is it a cosmetic, and help work them through that type of claim, right? So as an example, so that was something that from a testing perspective, we were able to help the customer. Also from a positioning and overall business positioning and pathway, we were able to help the customer walk down, help ourselves from the get-go, help keep them out of some potential regulatory hurdles. New equipment and processes require validation, and whether it's an HPP or a thermal process, we do have process authorities available within Certified Labs. I know EAS does as well. But we can help customers set up. We can send in the surrogate testing. We can go there and help them temperature map if required. I've had to do that on a couple of situations recently as well. And then, of course, new facilities and acquisitions, right? Companies are purchasing companies all the time. New facilities, they require testing. They require a tremendous amount of testing for startup as they get going. And then, of course, the overall routine testing required after that. Who do you currently use for testing labs, right? And are you happy with that? A lot of customers are happy with their testing labs. And one of the things we never want to do is interrupt the customer that is happy, with their testing lab. Clients often utilize multiple laboratories or are currently dissatisfied, right? Sometimes we have customers that are dissatisfied, and that's in this market, that's how customers get lost, are transferred really, the quickest, right? Is, with coming out of COVID, especially in the last year and a half, it was really hard to convince a customer to make any change unless there was some extreme dissatisfaction. So, I can point to the customers we've won and the customers we've lost to really that key value driver. But many customers do use multiple testing labs. I think there's historically in the US, many customers, for example, use MERU for micro and Eurofins for chemistry. And they do that because of expertise. And I think that's always an opportunity for them to centralize their testing into one space, centralize their data into one space, because we can provide both that expertise on the micro and the chem, as well as a competitive menu for both, which again positions us sort of in a unique spot. Key dissatisfactions for customers usually are just turnaround time, but even more so than turnaround time on their results, responsiveness, technical support, lack of menu, right, where they have to go to multiple locations or multiple places. Even the larger customers, larger providers in this marketplace don't necessarily centralize their all their testing, so their samples are being bounced around an organization. Some might go to Chicago, some might go to Canada, some might go here, where a lot of we have centers of excellence, especially in New York as far as chemistry goes, that we can handle most everything in a single location, which is nice. Clients with internal laboratories, they still often outsource the hard stuff, right? Like the unique things that come through. It's much less expensive for them to find someone who can help them develop a method and or test a method. that instead of them bringing it in, becoming bringing it under their ISO scope, for example, going through all the ISO validations that are required now for internal labs. So we often see tremendous opportunity even with customers and clients that offer internal labs. And then, as you know, whenever there's a for-cause testing scenario, definitely recommend sending that to an external lab versus internal testing from a disassociation point of view. And then, of course, another key area that we're seeing a lot of growth in, and I know a lot of the consulting team sort of works in these areas, R&D groups. And R&D groups are critical for us, especially getting into large customers, and going sort of, the term is wide and deep into strategic customers. And we're seeing a lot more outsourcing out of R&D groups, as I think innovation is kicking back in after a hiatus, right? And so we're being asked to develop across food, cosmetics, and supplements some pretty interesting testing programs. Everything from unique products and beverages to new analysis, like the addition of botanicals and some stabilizers and things to products, to beverage products specifically. A lot of innovation is going on, and that's opening up opportunities for us, not necessarily just to do the routine work, but to help develop new analysis that are going to support the product before it becomes a product. And that's really exciting, because those are the interesting things for us. So why don't I stop briefly there, and I know I have 3 questions here. Why don't I try to answer that? Thomas, do any of the labs provide overall migration level and/or specific migration level certification testing for European Union food contact materials? I do not believe we do. That's the first time I've actually seen that question, but let me follow that up post call. Bernardo, good morning. Validation, do you mean process validation or validation of laboratory procedures? We actually do both, and it's a good question. So when I was speaking validation in this presentation, I was meaning process validation. We do a significant amount of process validation. McCormick is one of our largest customers, and where we've helped with their process validation globally, both through global support over the years. They're one of our strategic partners, which it's no secret that we're on the list. But we also offer proficiency validation for internal labs. We've had a number of different requests for that recently, primarily due to the new SQF, what's the word I'm looking for? SQF guidance, I guess, which that proficiency testing is a part of. So we've done that. I think in the past, it's funny you should mention that, because in the past week, I've probably had 4 to 5 requests for that. Proficiency validation for laboratories.
And we have a question from Dave Bloomquist. And Dave, I'm going to unmute your mic here. So go ahead and ask your question.
Ted, I just was wondering if you've got any work that you've done on rapid methods or equipment that can do rapid methods. You and I may have talked about that type of thing several years ago at IAF.
Yeah, absolutely, David. So as far as rapid methods go, we are constantly, so it's interesting. So of course, in specifically, there's 2 things, right? There's sort of the indicator testing for rapid methods, and then there's the pathogen testing, right, for rapid methods. We typically only run Hygiena backs in our in our labs as far as PCR goes, and then the Vitis Biomer is our probably go-to standard rapid method. But we've worked with Hygiena on a number of their new analysis. I know we've evaluated some of the faster indicator type testing with that Neogen has just come out with, especially around yeast and mold, which is pretty exciting. I know 3M's come out with some new things, especially around indicator testing as well. But as far as that's concerned, we've basically relied on Vitis and Bax for our pathogen detection. And the reason we do that is they have the widest menu of AOAC validations out there on the marketplace. They have an internal control on every single analysis, on the PCR especially. And really it's just the tried and true method that we're most comfortable with, around the pathogens. I think there's still challenges with any rapid method, and every single one of those rapid methods has its drawbacks. Dave, we did talk years ago. I remember you quite well. We talked for a long time at AFP. I believe when I was with Roca Bioscience, which was a rapid method platform out there for a while. But cross-reactivity is a big one, right? And understanding that low-level detection, being able to detect, 10 to the 3 versus 10 to the 2. What's interesting with rapid methods and what we're seeing in the marketplace is not necessarily on the molecular technology necessarily, but it's really in the media and the sample prep, which we believe is really where the biggest additions, the biggest gains can be made around that. What I find is really innovative and has been sort of the holy grail, so to speak, is being able to figure out how to do a rapid yeast and mold. Yeast and mold is traditionally the bottleneck in 3 to 5 days for customers. Perfect. If we can shorten that, then a lot of release dates can be moved up. I think that's one of the changes in the marketplace that we've also noticed. There's been a couple of changes in the marketplace and that we've noticed. But years ago, people would release on pathogen and just hold on indicator organisms like your APCs, your Enterobacters, your E. coli coliforms, and your yeast and molds, right? So they would release product based on your Salmonella, Listeria, mono, or things like that. Well, what we're seeing is people holding on everything now, and that being a requirement from their buyers. We're also seeing the other biggest change is in chemistry, right? Before, people would sort of release without chemistry and provide that COA after. And I think we're seeing a lot, the chemistry market, and the need for faster turnaround times for chemistry, as well as creeping up as something as a value add in the industry. Does that answer your question, David? Somewhat.
And then I don't know if you noticed, but Manfred typed in a question as well.
Sure, let's see. Let me scroll down here. What is Certified Laboratories' footprint outside of FDA, USDA regulatory areas? So we do have the Health Canada capabilities as well at a number of our labs. That includes, of course, the Lab Smart group up in Canada, as well as ABC testing lab, not ABC, I'm sorry, MQL, testing labs, and our new acquisition, MCL Testing Labs, is actually Canadian as well. Has the Health Canada certifications as well. From a geographic standpoint, our footprint still sits only in North America, Manfred's, but, and I know, that's a bit different than some, that's really the biggest difference between us and some of the larger testing labs in the US. But I think one of the things that we're able to do, and one of the things I think you'll all notice when you do send us projects, is that we're very nimble, right? And we're very agile as far as getting projects together. So like I said, there's been a number of opportunities for us to do, for example, validation work in, I think, Italy. And we do, for example, we did over the COVID, we were doing some forensic testing training for the ingredients and spice industry for sanitation and filth testing for some of our customers out in India and in Southeast Asia. So we can sort of expand our coverage, but from an actual testing standpoint, Certified Laboratories, the footprint I showed you at the beginning, is our current current footprint. Was there something specific you were looking for, Manfred?
Manfred, I think I just sent you a prompt to unmute. There we go.
Okay, it was, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, it was just basically to prepare, to plan the future, when to turn to Certified Labs, when to turn to others in case of questions coming up.
Oh yes,
nothing concrete, nothing concrete.
Oh, okay. I'm not to say this is in perpetuity. I think as you can see, most of those acquisitions that I showed you, all of the acquisitions I showed you have happened in the past 2 years, putting this group together. So it's not outside the realm of possibility. Within a couple of months, we might have something there. It's just currently, this is currently where we stand. And then Bernardo, so for microbiological testing, do you consider uncertainty in the counts results? And how do the results be informed to the client? So as far as uncertainty, I believe you're talking about the indicator testing, right? Which is the more quantitative testing where there is up to a dilution, right, of variability in the testing. And it really comes down to, we follow AOAC methods or USP methods or food codex methods, depending on what we're testing, right? Those I believe in those, and then we validate those through our proficiency testing program at the lab for the individual analysts and the lab itself. I believe that a lot of times, on a COA reports a solid number, 300,000 APC. Very rarely do I see the measure of uncertainty listed in a microbiological COA. Often I see it in chemistry, but not necessarily in microbiology. And I think a lot of that is in the discussion with clients. And I think that's one of the advantages that I have working here at Certified, is that I get a chance to talk to the customers about their results and get them to understand what a 300,000 count APC means versus a 3 million, right? Or versus a, 10 million, or versus a less than 100 or 1,000 or whatever the lower limit of detection is. So I think, on a per basis, we do help customers quite often establish their action limits, whether it's through the already set regulatory guidance documents or recommended guidance documents, or if it's through, you know, having them build up their data set to make sure that we're building something that's valuable for them in their specific environment. So it's absolutely one of the advantages. That's one of the things I enjoy most about working here at Certified versus some of the other labs I've worked for, is that, you know, we do provide a lot of time on the individual accounts, getting them to understand where they need to set their limits to make sure that what they're testing is valuable, but not overset it so they can't release any product into the marketplace. So the lab in Toronto, Joe, specializes in vaping. What I say is the lab specializes in all the fun stuff, right? So they specialize in vaping, nicotine, cannabis, CBD, THC, and I believe they do some additional testing around that. So it's more so on it's more so on those types of products versus the traditional food, supplements, and cosmetics. If you all are ever interested in the technology and the testing, the levels of testing that actually go into vaping products, it's incredibly interesting. There's a tremendous amount of technology. I don't vape, but there's a tremendous, but I think the technology is pretty interesting. There's a tremendous amount of technology in the microprocessor or the little chip that's in those things, where, you know, it's controlling the inlet, it's controlling the outlet, they're measuring the droplets or whatever. So they specialize in that, but they do support a very global footprint. And they, you know, I know they do a lot of work for companies in Europe. I know they've done some work for companies in China and South Africa as well. So they definitely have a very global network of customers.
And then Robin typed in a question via the chat. Are any of the labs conducting analyses via GLPs?
So yes, all of our labs are GLP. All of our labs are ISO 170. Is it 17025? Certified. We also participate in a number of different proficiency testing programs. Along, you know, one of the things that we just got approved for example, and I'm sure you all have seen it in the news, is the heavy metals in baby food, which has sort of caused a focus on heavy metals that's now spreading to other segments, right? So there's a baby food council out of Cornell University, and they did a proficiency study on heavy metal testing in labs, and we were one of only a few labs, I think at less than a handful of labs, that passed the proficiency test. So we do these customer and organizational based proficiency tests as well. We do have a very strong quality program that is organized out of our headquarters in New York lab, and then run through the other 4 sites. We are undergoing a refresh of the quality programs at our ABC labs. And, you know, we have similar programs, slightly different just because of the nature of the testing at the MQL and MCL labs, where we're GLP, ISO, and then there's a number of different other validations and certifications that we undergo specifically for those programs. I'd be happy to send you a list of all the certifications that we have. It's for Certified Labs, we have a site on our website that has them all. Everything from, you know, the U.S. Coast Guard, testing for the U.S. Coast Guard, all the way up through, the FDA testing for imports and McCormick approved suppliers all the way over to ISO, A2LA, all that fun stuff. So yeah, absolutely. And all of our labs participate in it.
Great. Thanks everyone for so many good questions.
No, that's great. So I think, what I would like to ask the group is, can you think, I think there's an opportunity, and this is what I tell our sales team on this side, is there's an opportunity at almost every single one of our customers probably has a need for something EAS provides. One of you provides, some of your expertise, right? There's very rarely that I run into an organization that has everything wrapped up and couldn't use at least some help, external help with their program, with their testing, with their labeling, with their production, with their environmental, with their SQF, with their audits, with anything, right? There's very few out there. So the question really is does the customer have the budget to support it? And can we unlock the need, right? And make them understand the value add, the ROI of engaging in a consulting relationship through us, right? And I think on the other side, I think it's very similar, right? Like there's, even if a customer currently uses another third-party lab, they might be happy, their needs might be taken care of, but I think in most of the scenarios that you all run in, there's probably a need for some sort of analytical testing or review or something that certified laboratories can do better. I mean, one of the things that's exciting, and I get this question more and more now that we're going into the botanical market, is do you test for this? And I'll tell you, like, my first thing is like, I just want to write back to the customer and say no. And I would say about 8 times out of 10, I'll send it over to ABC Labs or MQL Labs, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's something we do all the time. Ashwaka, or there's all these weird new botanicals that are becoming mainstream in ingredients and products that customers are struggling to find places that can test them. The other place, from a regulatory standpoint, and Prop 65 testing, we're able to provide a complete Prop 65 testing program for customers. And what's really interesting, for example, in the Prop 65 market in the States, is initially we were getting probably 5 to 10 requests a week for acrylamide testing. Acrylamide, I believe, if I understand the regulation right, got put on a hold list, so it's not necessarily a requirement. So all the lawyers in California, they jumped to furans. So in the past, I want to say month and a half, we've had a significant uptick in requests for furan testing. So it's things like that where we can work together to see what we can see in the marketplace, and then be more proactive in helping provide a solution in the marketplace rapidly. One of the great things about that is our furan test was in place, but really on a limited subset of sample matrices. And in short order, we've been able to expand it to things like soy sauce. I think we got one for some other sauce, like barbecue sauce. And then there was a couple of other products that we were able to quickly validate. That's one of the advantages, again, working with certified laboratories, is I think we're nimble and agile enough. If there's a need to get a product validated, especially in the chemistry group, it's pretty easy for us to be able to accomplish that. So it's fun being that close and being able to see sort of the impact of regulation changes or market changes before I even hear about it. Like, why are customers asking me about furan all of a sudden? Why did I get 3 furan questions? But I think at the end of the day, the best thing is we're able to respond to that.
Right, agreed. And I remember after the California fires, you developed quickly a smoke taint test.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that's something that was really exciting. So California wildfires, and and I'm sure it's a segment true to a lot of our hearts, impacted the wine industry over there quite a bit. And there was a wine testing lab that got a lot of the business, but unfortunately the fires were so close that they had to evacuate for quite some time. So it left this gap. So what happens when there's wildfires, the grapes absorb some of the smoke in the form of what's called smoke taint, which I'm going to say these words wrong. It's guaiacol, and there's another component as well to it, and it literally gives a smoky flavor, like a taint, like to wine, which, as you know, we all know is really sensitive to taste, right? So within about a week and a half, we had a smoke taint analysis up and running, and we were supporting the wine industry in some critical decisions, right? So for example, the wine manufacturers all had to decide whether they were going to go through with their vintage for this year, or they were going to file an insurance claim. And what it came down to was the level of taint within their process, right, in their ferments and their grapes themselves. And we were able to help those guys not only make insurance claims, but also a few of them were able to confidently go through with this year's vintage when they felt like the taint was low enough that it wasn't going to impact the taste. So, of all the things that we do, there's that end of the spectrum to make sure that the 2021 vintage eventually makes it to market. I don't know how good it's going to be years from now, but we'll see. But we also do some really great things, right? And one of the stories I like to tell, two of our customers are a company called Adesia in med and food for kids, and they make this nutrient paste for kids for toddlers and infants in distressed areas. And whether that's a distressed area because of a natural disaster, or if it's something like Haiti, where there's just a systemic issue with child nutrition and things like that. But those two customers are two customers that utilize us in order to ensure that they release their product on time, that their product is meeting the nutritional value that's impacting these kids. And when talking to the clients, literally like a difference in 2 or 3 days with their product, especially, I mean, this one company's manufacturing facility is actually in Haiti. And so like the difference between 2 or 3 days and them releasing a product is the difference between kids going hungry and not in that environment. So, it's sort of both ends of the spectrum. One is, we save the wine vintage, and the other is we do some really good work that I'm really proud of here at Certified as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ted. And thanks everyone out in the audience for joining us. We recorded this, of course. If you have a desire to view it again in the future, feel free to. I'll send a link out and we'll post it on our internal webpage. If you find yourself out at a client site and find an opportunity for any other service that either EAS or the certified group provides, you can reach out to your director for, I guess I'd suggest reaching out to your director for EAS specific services. And then I can, if you email me regarding certified, I can get your question, comment over to Ted or someone on his team quickly. And we can try to help with their testing needs as well, if there are any. So thanks everyone again. Thanks, Ted. And we'll see you all again soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate it.
Take care. Bye, everyone.